Hello from COP23 here in Bonn, where the world's community are gathered to do no less than save the planet, put a halt to global warming. Well, one of the big things being discussed here at COP23 is how the financial institutions of the world, both public and private, are actually going to be able to work more effectively together so that the climate action that they do actually works. Now, two people with me here have been very involved in this whole debate. In fact, 2 years ago at the COP21 in Paris, you launched an initiative designed to do just that. Monica Scatasta, who is the head of climate, environment and social policy at the European Investment Bank, is here. And also we're joined by Ian Cochran, who is program director from the Institute for Climate Economics based in Paris. So let me ask you first of all, and those of you who are joining us, remember you can also ask some questions. Just send them along to the Facebook page where you'll see this interview. But let me ask you first of all, what does mainstreaming actually mean? Why does it matter, Monica?
Yes, mainstreaming could sound abstract to many of you, but in fact it's a fundamental concept and it's a very, very important concept. What it means is no less than taking climate change into consideration in everything that we do. So it's climate change in everything we do. And why does that matter? We cannot be a climate action champion and leader if we just focus on the very valuable and important targets in terms of climate lending that we have. Indeed, we have, and we do meet our climate action targets every year of devoting at least 25% of our lending to climate action. But mainstreaming is about making sure that our whole portfolio,
so the other 75%.
The whole portfolio, not the 25 and the 75, take into consideration climate change. So how do we do that? Let's see how we can do that. What that means is that if we follow the 5 principles that were subscribed to in Paris, we need to first of all commit to climate strategies. We need to manage climate risk. We need to make sure that we set climate smart objectives. We need to make sure then that we also track what we're doing and in fact are able to understand what the impacts of what we do are. And I always forget one because because that's the way it is.
Yeah, there are 5 of them. You managed at least 3 there.
I managed 4. I managed 4 of those. And we need to make sure that we also improve our climate performance.
Yeah.
Voila, that's the 5th. And that's the beautiful leaflet.
Those of you who are watching can actually have a look at those 5 principles in more detail. And the interesting thing was that around 20 institutions signed up to those principles. So it wasn't just about one organization doing it, but everybody doing it, everybody signing up. So what's happened since then, Ian?
So the last 2 years have been really excited, and I4CE as the initiative Secretariat has been really, have seen things move forward quite a bit over the last 2 years. So from those initial 20 institutions, we're now up to 31 institutions that have joined the initiative. And we have, from the Secretariat, helped launch 4 work streams that are bringing together these 31 members to contribute ideas, reflect together, and try to move practice forward around these 4 areas, which are risk, tracking, supporting cities, and then integrating climate change into the entire institution.
So you've got more people joining, and you've got, and today here in COP, you're hoping to get even more.
Yes.
But let's get back to basics here. We're here at COP23. The big picture is about lowering the temperatures of the planet. How does this initiative contribute to that goal?
Well, mainstreaming is fundamental because it helps meet a fundamental objective of Paris, which is to align not just the financial flows that are going into climate action, but all financial flows with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. What that means is that we need to be able to understand what the impacts in terms of climate change are of everything that we do and what the impacts of climate change on everything that we do in our portfolios actually are. This is very difficult. It's very difficult for governments. It's very difficult for financial institutions. So the Climate Action for Financial Institution Initiative is a fundamental way for financial institutions trying to do that, to share experiences, to share lessons, and to also disseminate these so that others who might want to follow suit are able to do that. And again, I would like to stress something that Ian just said. One of the key areas of action, these 4 areas of action of making sure that we have a strategy that a whole institution follows, is a key point to take into consideration. It's not just about the commitment at the highest level, as we had in the approval by our board of our climate strategy in 2015 for the European Investment Bank, but it's also about taking the whole institution with you, having the awareness, having the commitment to deliver, which is what we're currently doing with our climate action plans.
So what's your take on that, Ian, in terms of actually helping to put the Paris Agreement into practice, which is ultimately the roadmap in a way?
Okay, so as we know, the Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement has requested for an alignment or coherence of financial flows with these objectives. And perhaps when a lot of folks, particularly in the financial sector, will hear that, they'll see that's something very high level, something that they put into a beta, is regulated into a side piece that they're not quite sure how to do in their daily operations. So what we see with the initiative and its added value is really sharing practice and sharing knowledge. So the 31 institutions have submitted to date over 50 case studies that really detail how they're attempting to integrate the principles as well as the subjects and the work streams in their operations. And so today we'll be launching at COP today the online database, the Climate Mainstreaming Practices database, that brings these 50 case studies together and makes them publicly available, free to everyone, and really gives us some concrete details of how we can move from commitment to achieving objectives. And we'd also like to invite any financial institution that is not a member but would like to submit a case study. We are open to really try to expand the knowledge sharing beyond just those today that have signed up to the initiative.
So just remind us what kinds of people have signed up to this. Got the European Investment Bank, that's the EU's bank for those of you who don't know. But as well as that, it's not just public banks, is it, who've signed up here?
Exactly, and that's a very good point to bring out. So today, the initiative is made up of 4 general colleges. We have the multilateral development banks, we have the more domestic public development banks, but we also are drawing in the private financial institutions. So we do have representatives from the developed banks such as HSBC, Crédit Agricole, and others, but we also are beginning to work with and see interest from the private banking and commercial banking sector in the emerging and developing world. So, for example, Yes Bank has been a very active member of our initiative from the beginning.
To quote a well-known song, Monica, it's all about the money, isn't it?
It is.
You know, I mean, dealing with climate change and saving the planet isn't just for environmentalists. And I think that this initiative reminds us, doesn't it, that the financial institutions have a big role here.
Absolutely. No, financial institutions have a fundamental role. They have a fundamental role in making sure, again, that by working with beneficiaries, we can together promote the best practices that help us take climate change into consideration, but it's not just about the money that we put on the table, but it's also about finding ways to mobilize additional financing. And this bringing together of multilateral development banks, private banks, can really make a difference in finding new ways of doing that, while at the same time thinking beyond what we finance in the climate action space and understanding how we address the selection of projects, how do we address the consideration of risk. I mean, we can talk about the way in which managing risk, which is the second of the principles, is fundamental, regardless of whether you're a financial institution or an institution that is promoting a project or a government. Understanding how we take into consideration the impacts of climate change on your investment, on your action, is a fundamental issue. It's not about the environment, it's about making sure that we have a sustainable future. It's about making sure that we are economically and socially resilient. And this is the goal for tomorrow.
And you mentioned that principle number 2 about risk. Let's have another look at one of these. Principle 5, which is about accounting for your climate action. What does that actually mean briefly, Ian?
So I think we're starting to see in practice that accounting means a number of different things. It means tracking and communicating on what institutions are doing, whether public or private, to contribute to climate change mitigation, adaptation, and in more general, this transition to a low-carbon resilient society. But I also think we see as steps to moving beyond just tracking to communicate, but really thinking, how do we track this as early as possible within our operations to ensure we are identifying the risks, but also the opportunities that climate change and the mitigation can present in terms of new economic sectors, in terms of reducing exposure, etc. So accounting, I think, has those two pieces of both clearly demonstrating what institutions are doing, but also beginning to build that knowledge base internally to make sure that operational teams know when they can actually take steps to mainstream and to take action on climate change.
And finally, I mean, this is urgent, isn't it? Is that partly what is propelling this initiative?
Of course. I mean, here we are, as you said at the beginning, we're here to change the future. We're actually here to change our present because the clock is ticking, things are happening now, and unless we together work with these common goals and we try to address it in everything that we do, we're not going to get there.
And I would say, yes, there is an urgency. And again, the initiative is really pushing to ensure that the financial community is brought to the table, in some sense figuratively, where they can't solve the problem on their own. There needs to be the projects, there needs to be the policy, there needs to be action from all of society. But if we are going to do this within the time frame as we understand that action is necessary, the financial community needs to contribute. And I think we are taking steps to demonstrate how this can be done today.
All right, well, thank you very much, both of you. And that's all for now from COP23. Just reminding you, you can send your questions in, and both Ian and Monica, I think, will try and answer them. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.